Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Bitter Pill. So today I want to talk about an incident that happened a few days ago, and I meant to report on it sooner, but work got in the way, so I'm just getting around to it today. And if you happen to watch mainstream liberal news media like MSNBC or read the New York Times or something like that, you may not even have heard about this. There was very little media coverage of it. But on the other hand, it completely went viral on Twitter. And basically, what happened was that swimmer Riley Gaines, who competed at the University of Kentucky for, I think it was 2018 to 2022, as a swimmer, uh, competed in the NCAA Championships last year against transgender male Lia Thomas, who had been ranked 462nd as a male swimmer at University of Pennsylvania during his first couple of years of college, and then declared himself transgender and joined the women's swimming team at University of Pennsylvania, and proceeded to win the NCAA championship in swimming in one of the events last year. And so this was, as you might expect, perceived as unfair by many female swimmers, and they also certainly didn't appreciate that Lia Thomas was allowed to change and shower with the women, both at University of Pennsylvania and at the NCAA championships with the female swimmers. And this happened without their consent. The NCAA didn't inform them or anything, and it came as a total surprise to them. And so Riley Gaines has been one of the few swimmers who participated in NCAA competition who's spoken out about this. And so last week she was giving a speech at the San Francisco State University about her experience, and she was attacked by a mob of so-called transgender rights activists. And as I said, this got relatively little mainstream media coverage, but it got a lot of coverage on independent media outlets, some right-wing or more conservative type media outlets, and as a result of the amount of attention that it got, Riley Gaines went from having, let's see what I need to do here. Went from about 80,000 followers on Twitter to, as you can see there, almost 470,000 followers just a few days later. This is as of today. So people paid a lot of attention to this. But anyway, let me play a segment for you of her interview with Tucker Carlson, where she recounted what happened last year as well as what happened when she was at San Francisco State University. You may as well let her tell you it in her own words.
But Riley Gaines will say that because she's not afraid. So last night, Gaines went to San Francisco State University to talk about her experiences in NCAA swimming. And Riley Gaines is not a hater. She is a measured, decent person who believes in logic and reason and finding common ground with people who disagree with her. She does not think she is God. But that fact does not believe she's God makes her a terrifying threat to the zealots who do believe they're God. And so at San Francisco State last night, the zealots attacked her. A mob surrounded Riley Gaines and prevented her from moving through the hallways. At one point, the thugs said they wouldn't let her pass unless she. During the chaos, a man dressed as a woman punched her several times. The mob howled with rage, screaming threats and obscenities. We're not overstating. Here's what it looked like.
It's just me. I'm good. I'm fine. You got me. I'm good. I'm coming. I'm good. I'm good. Trust me. I'm good.
That's the most dangerous extremist group in the United States. There's no mistaking it. Riley Gaines, once again, is not an ideologue or a demagogue. She's not out to hurt anybody. She's a college swimmer who was cheated against and doesn't think that's fair. In the face of that, people threaten her life and scream transparently nonsensical things like trans women are women. Trans women are not women. Women are women and men are men. And that's unalterable. And if you think otherwise, you are delusional. And they are delusional and therefore dangerous. Last night, Riley Gaines was silenced and assaulted at San Francisco State. Her most basic civil rights were stolen by a violent mob. The thing we're supposed to be on the lookout for, well, there it is. If there is such a thing as a hate crime, you just saw it. And yet the administration and its thoroughly corrupt Department of Justice won't acknowledge that any of that happened because they endorse it happening. Riley Gaines is one of the bravest people we know, and we're grateful to have her join us tonight. Riley Gaines, thank you so much for coming on. Was that as horrifying as it looked?
I mean, it was terrifying for me. The police did not inform me of any sort of action plan. Turning Point USA invited me to the campus. I delivered a very civil and respectful speech where I had great dialogue with even protesters who were participating in a sit-in. All of a sudden, after my speech, the room was stormed. The lights were turned off, and I was rushed with no one there to escort me to a safe place. I was punched, I was hit multiple times, I was shoved, until finally we exited the room. But we could not leave because the protesters flooded the halls, and so I was pushed into a classroom along that hallway where I was barricaded in for 3 hours.
3 hours? Why didn't someone with a gun come and bring you to safety?
Because they were terrified. They were scared to put their hands on these people because they know what these people are capable of. These people yelled obscene, violent, vulgar things to both myself and the officers, I could tell, didn't feel comfortable putting them in a position that would mean they do their job, which is a really scary, chilling thought.
This is the most dangerous extremist movement in the United States right now. It's getting bigger, not smaller. It's gaining steam, not losing it. The White House has endorsed it. I mean, what does this mean for you? And I just can't say it again since I happen to know you. You are an inherently moderate person who means harm to no one. But are you worried about your safety going forward?
You know, I am worried about my safety. I have to be now. When we have people who are willing to do this, and we know why they're willing to do this, it's because they don't have reason, they don't have logic, they don't have science, they don't have common sense on their side. That's on my side. And so they protrude by violence, whether it's physical or verbal violence. But what this means for me, this does not deter me. This assures me that I am doing the right thing. This will not silence me when they want me to be silenced. It just means I need to speak louder.
Really quick, did anyone in the state of California in authority, any political figure, for example, defend you?
No, not the dean of students, not the campus police. I will say the city of San Francisco police that stepped in, they did a phenomenal job in escorting 3 hours later. But I will be pursuing legal action. I will ensure that the people who physically assaulted me, the people who put me in that position, they will face repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, if we can't identify that as evil, then we've really lost the thread. Riley Gaines, I'm glad you're still here, and
Absolutely.
Godspeed. Thank you.
Okay, so you heard it from her there yourself. She was attacked by this violent, uh, very angry mob simply for stating in her speech, they didn't really talk about that in this segment, that uh, yeah, she didn't think it was fair that biological males who say they're women, they transition to transgender women, so to speak, uh, were allowed by the NCAA to compete as to compete in women's events such as swimming. And Riley Gaines, Lia Thomas took advantage of this opportunity and tied for fourth, I believe, in the event that Riley Gaines was in, tied with Riley Gaines. And the trophy was given to Lia Thomas. She was the one who appeared on the award stand because that was, quote unquote, more politically correct to honor the transgender person who placed in a women's competition. And not only that, but, well, let me just play another segment here to let her tell you in her own words what happened.
In addition to being forced to give up our awards, our titles, and our opportunities, the NCAA forced female swimmers to share a locker room with Thomas, a 6'4", 22-year-old male who was fully intact with male genitalia. Let me be clear. We were not forewarned. We were not asked for our consent, and we did not give our consent. If nothing else, I hope you can truly see how this is a violation of our privacy and how some of us have felt uncomfortable, awkward, embarrassed, and even traumatized by this experience. I know I don't speak for everyone. It's impossible to speak for everyone, but I can attest to the tears that were shed on that pool deck by these poor 9th and 17th place finishers who missed out on being named an All-American by one place. And I can attest to the extreme discomfort in the locker room when you turn around and there is a male watching you undress while exposing himself. I can attest to the anger and frustration from these girls who had worked so hard and sacrificed so much to get to this point.
So I don't think you can argue that she wasn't shaken up by this experience in more ways than one. And so that's all she was talking about there at San Francisco State University. And as a result, she was accused of being a transphobe and a hater and so forth by this hateful mob. And she's never said that she has anything against trans people. She hasn't said that they don't have the right to not be discriminated against or harassed or any of that. All she's saying is they shouldn't be able to, if they're male, trans identifying males, they shouldn't be able to compete with females in athletic events, and they shouldn't be able to come into women's locker rooms. That's all she's saying. And for that, she was violently attacked. And just to talk a little further about just how big the average gap is between male and female performance among elite athletes, I just want to share some information about that with you. I looked this up using ChatGPT, an AI platform that will look up information for you, and unlike Google, which just gives you lists of hits, it will summarize information for you. And so I asked it, to what extent do men have a physical advantage in sports? Men generally have physical advantages over women in sports due to differences in biology, particularly in terms of muscle mass, bone density, and hormones. On average, men have greater muscle mass and strength than women, which can give them an advantage in power-based sports such as weightlifting, sprinting, and jumping. Men also tend to have larger lung capacity, higher levels of hemoglobin, which carries oxygen in the blood, and greater endurance, which can be advantageous in endurance-based sports such as distance running and cycling. Of course, there are individual differences in athletic ability. So, some women are stronger than some men, or faster than some men, or whatever. Depending on their level of training and physical characteristics of individuals and so forth. But on average, there's a pretty big physical advantage for men in sports where physical differences are relevant. In terms of specific differences, a study published in Journal of Applied Physiology found that on average men have 40 to 60% more upper body strength and 34% more lower body strength than women, etc. And notably, in a report published by the International Olympic Committee, transgender male athletes have an inherent advantage over cisgender female athletes due to their higher levels of testosterone and other androgens. And even if they go on hormone therapy and so on, if they've gone through male puberty, they still have physical advantages. How large is the speed advantage of men over women in sports such as running and swimming? I asked the AI bot. In running, men generally have faster times than women across all distances, with the difference in performance becoming larger as the distance increases. According to data from the International Association of Athletics Federations, the world record time for the men's 100-meter dash is 9.58 seconds, while the women's world record is 10.49 seconds. In the marathon, the men's world record is 2 hours, 1 minute, 39 seconds. The women's is 2 hours, 14 minutes, and 4 seconds. So, men are about 10% faster, and that applies to swimming as well, as you see in the next paragraph there. 46.91 seconds versus 51.71 for the 100-meter freestyle. Now, you might have noticed that there aren't any women playing in the NBA or other professional sports leagues, NFL, so on and so forth. And you might wonder, well, is there a rule that says that women can't participate in those exclusively male professional sports leagues? Well, I looked up for the NBA, and no, they do not. There's never been a female player in the NBA, but that's not because there's a rule against it. The reason is because, so far at least, there hasn't been a woman who has both tried to join an NBA team and had the ability to make the cut. There have been some exhibition games between athletes in different sports. So Serena and Venus Williams, famous, very successful female tennis players. Serena is the most successful women's tennis player ever at this point in time. They were easily beaten by men ranked about number 200 in the world in men's tennis. And there was an exhibition soccer match between the women's U.S. women's national soccer team and a team of 15 and under boys, so 14 and 15-year-olds from the Dallas, Texas area, and the boys easily defeated the women's Olympic team, something like I think it was 5-2. Same story between the Australian national women's soccer team and a club team of 15 and under boys there in Australia. So huge difference. If you look at track records, male high school athletes versus female Olympians, in almost every case. Definitely for track, generally for swimming. All of the top 14, 15-year-old, etc. boys in the high school track championships have better times than the women's Olympic finalists, including several boys holding times that are faster than women's world records. So there's no disputing what Riley Gaines is talking about in terms of the competitive advantage that males have over females in her sport, swimming, even if they have undergone gender replacement therapy. And then there's the other issue of women being made uncomfortable, women or girls being made uncomfortable by males who have transitioned and said they were girls or women, being in the locker room with them, without their consent. They didn't say it was okay. That's really the key here. It's one thing if people go to a nude beach and by their own consent, everybody's naked there, both males and females. It's quite another thing in a locker room, changing room, whatever you want to call it, where people expect that, with rare exceptions like a parent bringing their opposite sex kid into a locker room because they don't have anything else to do with them. They're a very young kid. Other than that, you expect that only people of your own sex are going to be changing and showering in that room. And most people are not okay with adults or adolescents of the opposite sex being in the locker room with them. And Riley Gaines, as you can see there, was visibly upset. Another thing that was just shocking about the event there in San Francisco is that an official from the UCSF administration praised the student protesters for their quote-unquote peaceful protests. Today, San Francisco State finds itself again at the center of a national discussion regarding freedom of speech and expression. Let me begin by saying clearly the trans community is welcome and belongs at San Francisco State University. Further, our community fiercely believes in unity, connection, care, and compassion, and we value different ideas even when they are not our own. Now, notably, they don't mention in this statement that Riley Gaines was welcome at UCSF, even though she certainly was not there to say anything particularly inflammatory. San Francisco State is regularly noted as one of the most diverse campuses in the United States. This is what makes us Gators, and this is what makes us great. Diversity promotes critical discussions, new understandings, and enriches the academic experience. But we may also find ourselves exposed to divergent views and views we find personally abhorrent. These encounters have sometimes led to discord, anger, confrontation, and fear. We must meet this moment and unite with a shared value of learning. Thank you to our students who participated peacefully in Thursday evening's event. It took tremendous bravery to stand in a challenging space. I am proud of the moments where we listened and asked insightful questions. I am also proud of the moments when our students demonstrated the value of free speech and the right to protest peacefully. These issues do not go away, and these values are very much at our core, blah, blah, blah. And, on one hand, as Riley Gaines herself noted, there were people in the event room, in the room where she was speaking, who respectfully discussed the issues with her, even though they disagreed. But at the same time, as she also noted in other interviews, even during the event, there were people who were trying to disrupt the event, trying to stop her from speaking, trying to shout over her, and then afterwards, she was assaulted, as she says. She was extorted and held for ransom. They literally demanded that she pay them if she wanted to get out of the room that she had to be barricaded in for 3 hours. And you make it to the airport safely. She missed her flight home because she had to be barricaded in a classroom for her own safety with a few police who were there for 3 hours. We must have different definitions of peaceful, she said. And notably, she is planning on suing the university as well as the perpetrators of the assault and pursuing criminal charges. The president of the student body said presence of police was excessive and uncalled for. Violence was spread by Riley Gaines. She says, all for sharing my lived experience of competing against a male and why it's harmful to not have sex-protected sports. At least we can agree that SFSU needs to hold themselves accountable, she said. And I guess I'll post a link to this statement so you can read it for yourself. But just no acknowledgement whatsoever that Riley Gaines was bullied and assaulted. Some other reactions, again from Gaines, who, it appears that she has some conservative views, but she's certainly a feminist in most respects. Supports women's rights to, for example, fair sports and single-sex spaces. Progressive indicates positively moving in the forward direction. The erasure we're seeing of women in the guise of progress is actually the contrary, allowing anyone to claim they're a woman who's born male, takes us back at least 50 years in time. 50 years ago was the time when Title IX was passed, which put regulations in place here in the United States promoting equity in terms of athletic scholarships and leveled the playing field in terms of female opportunities to participate in sports at all amateur levels. A couple of instances of other women's reactions. If you think the right side are the people who held a woman captive for hours because she is defending women's sports and required this police escort in order for her to leave, I don't know what to tell you. Hashtag save women's sports. Hashtags I stand with Riley Gaines. Another woman said, if you're screaming at a woman who says she was forced to be naked in front of a naked man, you're in a terrorist cult. If you're in favor of shutting down women speaking, you're in a terrorist cult. If you're for violence against women, then you're in a terrorist cult. And, personally, I'm certainly not saying, and I don't think she's saying here or elsewhere that I've seen her post on Twitter, that trans people in general are like this. In fact, the majority of trans people are females who transition to identifying as a man or a boy. And most trans people, regardless of their sex, are not participating in this movement that is going around shouting people down and assaulting them and so forth. So on one hand, we have trans-identified people, and on the other hand, we have, as she says here, and I agree, a terrorist cult. All right, that's all I have to say for today, and I will see you next time.